Now with the fourth entry in my series of video game movie reviews comes the one that many consider to be the best of all. Is it though? So let's find out if this adaptation is a flawless victory or, like so many that came before it, a fatality.
It has begun!
Is the highly anticipated adaptation of the game that started in the early 90s and continues strong until this day. Unlike many of the adaptations that come before it, this one is based on a game that actually does have a fairly robust backstory, so the filmmakers had a lot more to pull from. The movie follows our three main characters, Liu Kang, Sonya Blade, and Johnny Cage, as they enter into the mythical tournament, each of which having their different reasons for doing so. They're fighting mostly against combatants from another dimension called Outworld, which wants to invade our world. And if the Outworld combatants win the tournament 10 times in a row, then they get permission to invade our world and take it over. Up to this point, they've apparently won 9 times, so this is the one that really matters. Liu Kang, who was brought up by monks in a monastery, has been training since childhood to be the chosen one and save the world. But he left the order quite some time ago because he stopped believing in their teachings and thought pretty much everything they were saying was horseshit. In his absence, his brother stays behind and tries to take over his role, and subsequently gets killed by Shang Tsung, which is what brings Liu Kang back to the monastery, not to fulfill his destiny as the chosen one, but for revenge. Johnny Cage, on the other hand, is a Jean-Claude Van Damme-esque martial arts actor who no one really takes seriously, and he gets accused of being a fake all the time. His motivation for joining the tournament is to prove to the world that he's not a fake. And then there's Sonya Blade. She's tracking down her arch nemesis, Kano, who killed her partner some time ago, and simply follows him to the tournament. After everyone arrives at the tournament, they start to find that this mythical talk of other worlds and monsters and tournaments to save the universe is actually true. Then there's some fighting, a little bit of character development, they all learn a lesson, and in the end confront Shang Tsung for, you guessed it, a climactic battle to decide the fate of the universe. This movie is fun as hell. It's director Paul W.S. Anderson's first foray into video game movies, though it won't be his last, but we'll get to that later. The movie received a PG-13 rating, to a lot of people's dismay. However, while I do think in some properties a rating can matter, it's not what makes a good movie. A good movie is a good movie regardless of what the rating is. And while this movie is violent, like its source material, it's not a gore fest. Now, a lot of people have said they wanted a darker, grittier, hard R version of And while, yeah, that might work, part of me thinks that going that route could suck some of the fun out of it as well. I'd be game to see it for sure, but that's not this movie. Because while as stated earlier, this movie is violent, it's also fun. It's lighthearted when it needs to be, and more serious and violent when it needs to be as well. But it's never really over the top in its violence. And this may be one case where that PG-13 rating holding a movie back actually helped a little bit. The movie includes a fair amount of the characters from the games that preceded it. Not all the characters look exactly like their video game counterparts. Some of them do, but not all of them. But that's okay, because the route they took works for the movie. They took enough from the game and inserted it into the characters to make it interesting, yet not goofy. Overall, the movie has that right balance of reimagining of the source material and items pulled directly from it to satisfy fans of the material and newcomers alike. The movie also has some great winks and nods to the source material, like Johnny Cage's friendship finishing move showing up at the end of his battle with Scorpion. Little nods and in-jokes like this were great to see from a fan's perspective, but at the same time they weren't so overbearing to leave out everyone else. It was just the right amount. The movie does a really good job of setting up its main characters very quickly, and in small little scenes giving you a very good idea of who this character is. Liu Kang's character is believable and interesting enough to follow as the chosen one. Oddly enough, Johnny Cage is probably the most interesting and fun character to follow. He is involved in a lot of the humor in the film, which it has just that right amount of. Unfortunately, Sonya Blade, played by Bridget Wilson, doesn't fare so well. She's workable, but not great. She does stand out, and that's mainly due to the performance of Bridget Wilson. It's very stilted. It seems to loosen up a little bit as the movie progresses, but especially in the first half of the movie, it's very noticeable. Doesn't ruin it, but it is there. Another character that really shines here is Shang Tsung, played by Cary Hiroyogi Tagawa. I butchered the hell out of that. He's a great villain and fun as hell to watch anytime he shows up on screen. So let's talk about some effects. Is an effects-heavy movie. Is also a movie from 1995. The mid to late 90s was a weird time for effects. CG was just starting to be used a lot, and while some things looked really cool back then, looking back 25 years later, some of it doesn't hold up quite as well. Thankfully, the movie's not a CG fest and it's just all over the place. It's used fairly sparingly, at least the CG that's in your face. They use a lot of practical effects as well, and every bit of the practical effects look fantastic. Goro is the standout here. The mix of performers in a suit and puppetry just looks fantastic with this character, and you believe him to be a real-life living character. Reptile, on the other hand, which is a fully CG character for the majority of the movie, not so much. While it's not so bad that it totally ruins the movie or anything, because he only pops up here and there, I have to be honest and say Reptile looks like ass. Like I said, it doesn't ruin it, but it definitely stands out. Hasn't aged well. Really, besides Reptile and a couple of other small CG details, the movie looks great. The sets are really big and extremely detailed. They're awesome. I was really kind of surprised that a video game movie in the mid-90s set design looked this good. It's overall a really good looking movie, especially for the amount of effects they used in 1995. It looks great. So the characters are good, the special effects are more or less good. So what about what we're all here to see? The fights. It is after all. The fighting in this movie is pretty good. It's loads better than, say, Double Dragon or Street Fighter. And unlike Street Fighter, there's actually a fair amount of fighting in this movie. A lot of the fight scenes in the movie aren't necessarily up to the standards of today. Doesn't mean they're bad, but they're just not quite there. And you can definitely see the difference in the actors that are actual martial artists and the ones that are not. But overall, I think the movie does a really good job of making everybody look like a badass. While none of the fights are bad, the two standouts are definitely the battle between Johnny Cage and Scorpion and Liu Kang and Reptile. These two fights are frantic, brutal, and kinetic. They are more in line with today's standards of fights, of a non-stop barrage of kicks and punches. They're very exciting and tons of fun to watch. Much like the fights, the story moves fast. There is not a lot, if any, downtime between scenes. They just go, 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 go. But that works with this material. If you had too much time to stop and think about what was going on screen, you'd probably pick it apart, and it would end up taking away from the whole experience. This movie is about getting your blood pumping, getting you excited, and it does it. Its story is a simple one for sure, but the way it's presented is interesting and exciting. While everybody on screen does a pretty good job, it can be a little hammy at times. It's never corny or campy, but it can be a little hammy. A lot of the characters play everything really big, but it works here. The movie inserts just the right amount of badassery at just the right time to counter the ham-fistedness that it throws in too. It knows it's a movie based on a fighting game, but you can also see that it seems like everyone involved with this project, in front of and behind the camera, was having a great time doing this and has a genuine love for the source material. That really bleeds through to the film itself. It makes it a better product overall. Something else about this movie that's awesome as hell is the soundtrack. It's full of a ton of mid-90s pulse-pounding techno that'll get your heart racing. And if we're talking about the soundtrack, you know we gotta talk about that song. Probably the most recognizable thing about overall is Techno Syndrome, aka the Mortal Kombat theme. You've all heard it, you all love it, don't deny it. You can't hear that song and not want to move your ass. I dare you, try it. And it's utilized a few times in this movie, but never overutilized. But could you really hear that song too much? The movie is satisfying on pretty much every front. It ends on a pulse-pounding, exciting note that leads into, well, we'll get there. Overall, the movie is a fantastic ride. You have to see this movie. It is absolutely, without a doubt, worth a buy. Did any of you really think it was going to get a different rating? While not every single technical aspect of it holds up 25 years later, the movie as a whole absolutely does. This is what video game movies should be. It doesn't have to be an exact replica of the game that it's adapting, but it does need to preserve the essence of what made its source material popular to begin with. And that's what Mortal Kombat does. It's fun as hell and entertaining every time I watch it. What else can you ask for out of a movie? So yeah, if you don't already own it, go out and buy it right now. It's absolutely worth it. You will not be disappointed. So there it is, guys, my review of... If you like this and want more content like it, hit that subscribe button and help my little channel grow. If you agreed with what I had to say, give me a thumbs up. If not, let me know in the comments below why. And as always, I'll see you guys next time.
Let Mortal Kombat begin.
So what's next? Oh.
Animality.